Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the May episode of the Long Hill Report. I'm Richard Morchoe, and we have as guest, as usual, Gus Steeves. And welcome aboard. And Gus is raring to go. He said he had things to bring up, so we're going to let him start.
Well, I think one of the things that's been kind of on my mind lately, and if you've been following the news, you might be aware of what's called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which is basically rejiggered Red Scare nonsense, McCarthyist nonsense from the 50s. I think they dragged it out, blew the dust off of it, changed a few names in it, and are trying to get us, instead of afraid of communists, they're trying to get us afraid of Palestinians. And it's blatantly unconstitutional because if you think about it, it's trying to conflate opposing the Israeli government's treatment of Gaza and the West Bank with more general bad treatment of Jews, when ironically most of the people who are opposing Israel's treatment of Gaza are Jews.
Is it most people?
There's maybe not most, but there's a significant number.
I
don't know exactly how
I would
many,
wonder
but
what
there's a
the
significant
percentage is. You have the groups like, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Nurai Kata, which is very, very orthodox. You wouldn't be able to tell them, a layman like me wouldn't be able to tell them apart from Hasids. Or maybe they are Hasids, it's just a different branch. I don't know, but they have the same uniform, and they are anti-Zionist because they say the Messiah has to come and establish the state. We have no right to do that type of thing.
That's certainly one element of it, and then you got the other element of the more secular, things like Jewish Forces of Peace.
Yeah,
who are mostly in this country,
but
who are advocating, who are creating these rallies in various. A lot of them are involved in the rallies in the various colleges across the country now. And granted, there's a significant number of Palestinians involved in those too.
I would say the majority. Well, I don't know if the majority, but there's a huge amount of, as a percentage, considering the amount of people in this country who are children of or immigrants from Palestine.
Yep.
I can't be an overwhelming group. So it's a lot of just students. There is the Jewish aspect in it who are part of the groups.
Right.
It is a good smattering of people.
Yeah.
Are there some anti-Semites? Well, I would say there's probably anti-Semites everywhere.
There's a few,
unfortunately.
And they will come out from under the rocks when anything comes out that will allow them to target Israel or Jews.
But I have not. What little news I've been able to, whatever little news I've been able to glean from watching news and stuff, and I really don't want to watch too much.
No, me either.
Is a wide different groups, a mass group. I haven't been following the groups that are opposing them. I was listening today on one thing about the police allowed rioters to go after one of the groups.
That was in UCLA, I believe.
UCLA,
Yep.
And then when they were done, the police went after, or vice versa, one or the other. So we know that power, or an aspect of power, is saying, we don't want this to happen. We want you to stop. We want to continue. We want to continue to support Israel.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and they've been blatant about it.
Now, I, being infinitely older than you, well, moderately older than you, I remember the demonstrations in the 60s.
Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't on the team, but I remember them quite a lot. They were everywhere. My small liberal arts college wasn't big, but they forced the flag down once. And there is a different, vastly different flavor to it.
How so?
Power was less on the side, less against the demonstrators
Back in the 60s?
back in the 60s.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Power. Power is nuanced.
Right. So what do you mean by power in that sense, though?
An establishment vibe of, especially say like in Massachusetts, in say Cambridge and Boston.
Mm-hmm.
In Cambridge especially, they were more on the side of the students.
Right.
And of course, if you've got your city on the side of the students,
Mm-hmm.
the police are going to be careful about what they do.
Right.
Not
And
that
they
there
should.
wasn't some head bashing anywhere. I don't remember exactly. Now, we live not far, and I'm every weekend at least spending some time in Amherst, usually.
Yep.
I would be shocked and surprised. I wasn't in the Amherst area back in the day,
Right.
but I would have been shocked or surprised if they weren't more or less more sympathetic to the demonstrators than a lot of other places.
I'm sure that's still true from what I've seen. The people I haven't been up to Amherst demonstrations. I know they're going on, but I know some people who have been, and they have pointed out that they've generally been very peaceful and cooperative in most of the demonstrations and most of the colleges are.
Well, I thought I heard this morning that they did have one and they cleared out some students from somewhere.
That does happen. Yes.
But,
some of the schools do.
So where this is going is a good question, because there is a heavier hand, even in Cambridge, which I would not have, which basically says the tide is turned, sort of.
In what sense? Because I think one of the issues is that for the last century plus, we have seen a subtle conflation of Judaism with Zionism, especially since Israel became an entity. The problem is that I think we see it more in this country, whereas it's much more nuanced in Israel and the Jewish communities themselves. Because they still recognize that there is a distinct difference between the various flavors of Judaism.
Well,
and I don't necessarily mean liberal versus conservative. I mean the sense of the various ways of people seeing what Israel is, what Israel's history was, what it was created for, and that kind of stuff. And from the stuff that I've read, and I mean not being Jewish and not having been alive at the time, it's all the stuff that I've seen is all stuff that I've read from various sources, some of them Jewish, some of them Palestinian, some of them other historians, talking about the kinds of conflicts that they went through to create Israel, and it depends a lot on which sources you read, whether or not the process was, quite frankly, fair to anybody, I guess. I realize it's really general, but
I did read too long ago, "O Jerusalem," which is almost kind of a textbook about the establishment of the state.
Who wrote that?
From a secular view, it's not a Jewish, it's not an Arab book. But more and more, there's Howard Arain. It's all. If you want to look now, and you want to read about the founding and how it happened, and Theodore Herzl and the whole thing, you can look at it. What seems apparent is there was enough of the important Jewish people in the world that they were going to do it if they could. But they had to get people to come in.
Yeah.
And Adolf Hitler helped that eventually a lot.
Well, that's certainly true.
So then you've got the makings of a state there. Now, how fair, how fair was Zionist land purchasing, and all, and how fair was the resistance of Palestinians? I'm not going to argue that. I'm not even going to get into that.
Well, it depends a lot on which version of history, the various historians you read.
Yes, you can, but
There's
you
so
can't
many
really.
elements of it.
Now,
Yeah.
what happened in what do you call it? When they were establishing the state, and the Jordanians came in the east, the Egyptians came in from the west, Syrians. Everybody tried to squelch Israel right away. Ended up there was a truce. What I would perceive was a truce. The West Bank was all Jordanian, and there were other parts, Gaza and everything. 56 was a debacle that didn't work out at all for Israel, or for that matter, Britain and France, and the Suez
Canal crisis. Yeah.
67, we can argue that back and forth which side was justified. You know, I'm not going to do it. I don't have 2 more lives.
True.
Until I get the 48-hour day, I'm not going to. So here we have, at this point, the Israeli state that believes is justly, and everybody wants to believe they're doing something justly, that they've justly established them to justly defending their state, and you have the Palestinians who believe they are in Gaza in a concentration camp and oppressed in the West Bank and anywhere else.
And that they're trying to defend themselves too.
And
that's the problem, is that you got 2 groups of people who strongly believe that the land is their land.
So therefore,
and it is.
October 7th, October 7th was either an unjust invasion or it was almost the equivalent of the Tet Offensive. Well, why, you know...
Well, I think the problem is that it's taken out of it's one element of a much longer context.
That's what I'm saying.
Of stuff that's been going on for decades.
Both,
of this tit-for-tat stuff that's shooting back and forth at each other.
So
it's one of the current response from Israel is one of the more brutal ones
in the
last several decades.
If you were a Palestinian, would you see October 7th as just? And why? Could you see it in no way justified?
If I were Palestinian?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is I'm not Palestinian, so I don't live there. But I
know that. I said if.
I know. I think I can understand why they did it. Because of the fact that I think we have a situation where being in what essentially is a giant outdoor concentration camp of 2+ million people, where over the last couple of decades, they've had gradual economic and other opportunities stripped from them over the years. They've basically got a dead zone around the walls that they can't even enter without being shot or at least photographed and picked up by the Israeli police at one point or another. And they can barely go out to fish beyond a very small radius distance from the coastline without being picked up.
Your answer is essentially, if you were Palestinian, you would see it as a justified act of resistance.
I think it was, from that point of view, I think they were justified. I think it was also desperate, because I don't think that they expected to actually have any significant success. And I think that logically, they would have expected a pretty serious Israeli retaliation, although I don't think they expected it to be as severe as it has been. Because in the past, they've had similar incidents happen where the Israeli response came back. It was fairly brutal, but relatively short-lived. This one's really brutal. I mean, there's been something like 35,000 people killed, more than 100,000 people injured. Gaza is in ruins. And the last third of Gaza Rafah is going to be ruined in the near future.
So the answer is, if you were Palestinian, you would see it as justified. Are you saying no? I mean, I'm trying to get that.
I know
it's a choice. I mean,
it's a hard question to answer, to say honestly yes or no in that situation, because I think because I don't know, I'm obviously, I'm not privy to what their goal was, actually. All we know is what we hear from their ministry, what we hear from the IDF. Both sides probably lie, as wars always, both sides in wars always lie. And I think that if they hoped they were going to achieve something, I'm not quite sure exactly what it was. On the other hand, they did create a massive upswelling of support in other parts of the world for Palestine that didn't exist. The problem is that they did it at the expense of about 130,000 of their own civilians.
Well, it's not
injured and killed. So I don't know if that's a fair trade-off. And at the moment, we have seen that the other countries that have historically claimed to espouse Palestinian freedom and all that stuff, are really not doing much.
One group is...
Except the Houthis.
Okay.
They're about the only ones that are doing
it. All right.
And the Iranians to a certain degree, but only when they were provoked.
Okay. I'm going to answer that. If I were a Palestinian, you know, you ask, of course, what is justice? Anything at all. As William Butler Yeats said, too long a sacrifice, make a stone of the heart. But I would say that's probably true of Jews as well. The Jewish answer here, some people are calling it genocide. I won't say it's genocide, but it's definitely mass murder.
Definitely, absolutely.
Definitely mass murder. I think seeing the mass murder on TV, and I don't watch it on TV, right. But I see sometimes you'll come up on a news thing on the internet. Right. Seeing that, you have to say, so now I want to get back to the Houthis. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're big. They're big. They're about the poorest nation in the world.
Among one of them, yes.
And they have caused such an interdiction of sea traffic, of maritime traffic, that is amazing. And now I think Iran is playing it sharp.
I think they are, because they know that it's extremely risky. But
well,
they also think long term.
They have been thinking long term. Yes. But they exposed something when their man was murdered in
Damascus.
Damascus.
Yep.
They exposed something. They said, we're gonna fight back. We're gonna show you something.
Yep.
They showed that Israel cannot defend against that.
No, they can't.
They need the U.S. They needed. I think they let France and Britain in just for fun, but they definitely needed the ringer.
Yeah.
And
right.
That was a demonstration of power that nobody really got.
No, I think you're right.
In the press, anybody who wants to observe it gets it.
Well, I think part of the problem is that our press is so totally bought and paid for by the interests, partially of the defense contractors in this country that want to make money selling this stuff to Israel, and have been. And they have a vested interest in not saying that it doesn't work. The Iron Domes and the Patriot missiles and those kinds of things. The various layered defenses that Israel tries to use.
I think it's more that there's just only 6 or 7 entities that own all the mass media.
Oh, that's a huge part of it.
And they know, and their side is pro-Israel.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Of that. Now you were going to mention the things that are coming up now, like I'm going to let you get on TikTok for what's happening, and of course the speech thingy, passing the law,
Which one do you mean? The banning TikTok or
banning,
the Anti-Semitism Act, which I
the
will be kind of
Anti-Semitic Act.
Okay.
This is just the heavy hand
Oh, it is.
of the duopoly.
It is, absolutely. And it's unfortunately it's standard operating procedure because they can't think their way out of a paper bag. And so they keep falling back on, let's squelch the people who express ideas that we don't like. That's standard operating authoritarianism. That's what they do pretty much in every regime that becomes authoritarian. And I think it's ironic that, my father's Democrats, when he was still alive, and especially in the 90s, and when I was a younger person, I don't think they would have ever considered this to be the right thing to do. But they have certainly become the authoritarian party in this country. And I think it's regionally ironic that there was something I saw online a couple days ago where it was Hakeem Jeffries, who's the Democratic minority whip in the House right now, who criticized Marjorie Taylor Greene's stance against funding. It was either Israel or Ukraine or both. It was the same bill.
I don't think it was Israel, but I think,
but whichever one, she didn't want to send money to one of the stupid wars.
Ukraine. She hasn't for a long time.
Specifically saying it should be spent on America.
Yeah.
But wait a minute. How is that anything but not a sane statement?
Yeah. And well, see, this is where it's all turned. I mean, what's his name? Talk show host will say, it was the Democrats who were pro-slavery.
That's true. They were.
And then the Democrats became, quote, progressive. The dance goes on.
It does, yeah. Just like you've seen over the last several decades, the symbolic color of the two parties has changed. They flipped sides.
Oh,
the Democrats used to be the Reds. They used to be associated with quote unquote communism, which they weren't. And the Republicans were blue. And now it's gone the other way, and it's probably swinging back again. Who knows what it's going to look like eventually? But the problem is that our country is so focused on symbolism, and they do so much of this idiotic symbolic flag waving from the parties and powers that be to distract us from the fact that they really are saying the same thing, often with a few outliers.
Well, the Republicans were at least mentioning it more than the Democrats. The border.
What?
They were mentioning the border.
Oh,
more.
right. Yeah, they were.
And the Democrats would go, well, we had a border bill for you. Only let 5 million in an hour, and we'll limit it to 5 million an hour, and we're going to secure the. No, so they were doing that dance.
Well, and the other parties do. Both parties do the same thing. Sometimes they'll play this thing. Sometimes they play labor issues. Sometimes they'll play other issues that are supposedly beneficial to the people. But when it comes down to close the doors and they make their deals, and they come up with these bills that are this long, and 99% of it is slime, with a little bit with 1 page here and 1 page here and a few pages over here that might benefit you if you know how to read them and use them.
But the Republicans were more. The bulk of Republicans were more consistent about Ukraine until McCarthy, what's his name? Yeah, McCarthy, I guess his name. Who's the guy now?
The guy who's House Speaker?
House Speaker?
Johnson.
Johnson. Until somebody took him in the room or something. But they were more against that. And the Democrats, like Jim McGovern.
Yeah.
What a fraud. What an absolute fraud. I'm for peace. I'm the peace guy. I've always been the peace guy. I'm the peace guy.
Right.
I'm the peace guy. And we're going to bring peace to Ukraine by bombing it to nothing.
Well, you look at the last funding bill. The only ones who voted against the final bill, they were all Republicans.
Yeah.
There were like 15 of them. Even the quote unquote progressive Dems all ended up folding over.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of that. You people do not represent us if you want wars.
Well,
you are not progressives.
That's why I came out with my method of electing presidents that would have no money involved in it.
Oh, we need to have, that's part of the problem. We need to have no money involved in it. That's exactly why we're in this mess.
I am working on something to get us out of the Middle East.
That's good.
Of course, no chance of it happening. But you remember, we're contemporaries. You remember the wars with the Barbary pirates. We were just young sprites then.
Oh yeah, I remember that one quite well.
In the very late 18th and early
I know what you mean.
19th century, we had a treaty with one of that's never really been broken, I guess, or was never broken, I guess, when France took over
Morocco?
Tunisia and Tripoli and all that. It probably was superseded, but we made a treaty. And our treaty was, one of the aspects of our treaty was, the United States is in no way a Christian nation.
Yeah, I remember that. That was John Adams saying.
No,
Yeah.
no, I don't think, it wasn't Adams, it was somebody, it was actually, well, John Adams was part of it in signing the bill, but
right.
he didn't negotiate it. But anyway, my point in bringing this up is we said, you know, we were basically, when we adopted the Constitution and the religious amendment, First Amendment about religion.
Right.
We did that basically because you had your Puritans up here, you had your Anglicans or Episcopalians down in Virginia, you had your Quakers, and you had some Jews in Rhode Island, Catholics in Maryland. Who's going to be the church? Well, let's just say
None of us.
no church. We won't. They didn't say. And for years after that, there were established churches in the states.
Yes, there were.
Right. There's nothing wrong if we want to have the state congregationalism as the state religion in Massachusetts, which we probably don't. We could do that, but we didn't want.
Theoretically. I don't know if the Constitution of Massachusetts would allow it.
Probably not, but we could. We could amend that.
Theoretically, yeah.
So we have a rule with foreign states that we are not involved in religion, and any wars we have with you are not religion.
We should not.
Now we have two entities. The Muslim ones, their countries do say like almost all of them do say, like the Islamic Republic, and the Houthis are an Islamic this, and somebody else is another Islamic. And the Jewish state, Israel is in its constitution defined as the Jewish state, but it does not have an established religion.
But by definition, they are. If they're saying they are a Jewish state, by definition, they have an established religion.
Well, no, they don't have. They say basically you can, if you have Jewish descent, that's you're Jewish for state purposes. But George, I think his name is Julian or Jordan Schachtel. He is Zionist, and he basically said we are Jewish by the descent and everything, so it's a Jewish country. And I think he sort of subtly said it was religious. So
well, that's what Likud has been saying for all along.
So we have to say, you know what? We're dusting off that treaty. We're not a Christian nation. We got to leave.
I agree. That would be a good thing.
Yeah.
I think the irony is that at the moment I'm reading something about the English explorers of Africa, and that was one of the big things that always got them in trouble, is that they were basically just arrogant Christians.
They were what?
The ones that often got in trouble and usually got killed during their expeditions of explorers of various parts of Africa, they're the ones who were most arrogant about being European, and specifically English and or Christian. The ones who survived and got the most information were the ones who were willing to blend in, and they were much more subtle about being Christian, but they were willing to play the role of being local, of some form or other. I mean, they were white guys, so they were obviously not black African people, but they could at least had done some homework. They knew what Islam did. They knew what their various practices were. They dressed like Muslims. They participated in the community, and they treated the people with some respect. That's, I think, the ultimate problem, is that we are allowing the people who run the show in this country and various other parts of primarily European countries to run roughshod over a large part of the world and with attitudes that are totally out of date.
Which is, in ending here, as we get to the end, which is why I am the chairman, chief executive officer, and only member of the Neutralist Association of the U.S., because if we go overseas, we will be crazy. Because countries that do go overseas, they might have a little bit of a good run with their colonialism, but they're crazy, and it eventually comes a cropper.
It does.
England
and it always has.
England was extremely lucky to have a maritime empire because she could sail away from it. Other countries, they don't get that break.
Well, that's true. I mean, ironically, we could theoretically sail away from ours
That's
too.
what I am. That's,
but we
that's,
don't.
That's the whole point.
We could easily bring the troops home and say, we need the troops to come home to do something constructive in our country.
Well, that's
build
what
roads and bridges and stuff.
That's what I've been talking about.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I
ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to a convert here, Gus Steeves, and we will be speaking with him next month.
I've never disagreed with that part of
it. Next month to see how his conversion is progressing. This is Richard Morchoe for Long Hill Report. Come and visit us next month. Thank you.
I've never disagreed with bringing the troops home. We should have done that a long time.